Hello. Okay. Today we have a game between two of my friends, Manu playing as black and Dane playing as white. These videos are meant as a learning tool and hopefully lead to further improvement. Without further ado, let's see what kind of a wild game these two had here. There have been some really insane moves in there, and Manu was obviously the favorite going on into this match here. And Dane was playing as white. So let's say what happened first. Dane opened with e4, which is a absolute classic and normal opening. Manu responds in time, black in with a absolute normal move. And here we have a bishop to c4, which is an opening you don't see very often, I'd say. You know, chess has a lot of really fancy names for all of those kind of openings. Funnily enough, though, this opening is literally called the bishop's opening. Not played very often, but not terrible nonetheless. You can see the evil bar on the left side here is now perfectly equalized. Manu responds with knight to f3, attacking the pawn and developing a piece. You know, when you try to learn chess, you always want to develop your pieces, create threats, prepare to castle, and of course control the center, which this knight is certainly doing. Cool. Next move we have here is d3. Totally fine move. Yeah, it protects the pawn. Allows the bishop to develop, so not a bad of a move either. No blunders yet. And then black played d5. Now d5 is already like a very sharp line, and it's a bit unclear to me what the purpose of this move was. I mean, yeah, it's protected twice and attacked. Oops, and attacked twice. So it's not like gambiting a pawn, but it's a little bit awkward because, well, Dane proceeded to take it obviously, and Manu took back with the knight. But now you move the knight 2 times to be in this position where it's not really that comfortable. It doesn't have any good square to go. I mean, even if you trade, you like this pawn is lost. Unless you want to go for like some shenanigans here. So yeah, a bit of a weird move, not terrible by any means, but just a very unique choice in opening there from Manu. We have knight to f3, natural developing move, preparing to castle, and also taking this pawn, right? And now Manu develops his bishop with a check. Now, you might have noticed that the evil bar here on the left spiked quite a bit after this move. I will show you one more time. Yeah. It was already a bit in white's favor here, but now it went from plus 0.4 to plus 1.3. So yeah. That was the first, I wouldn't say big mistake, but certainly inaccuracy here. If you follow the chess principles to, you know, learn how to play the game and develop pieces and all of that, then this move makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, you're developing a piece. You're also, putting the opponent's king in check. So it really like 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Usually, if you can develop something with tempo, that's a good thing. And if white is not careful here, that also lays a trap, right? Let's say you want to block this with a knight, then you just get forked here and you basically lose the game, right? I mean, this rook is gone forever, right? So it's a nice, you know, it develops the bishop, it gets tempo with a check, and it creates a little trap here, right? The problem is that Dane did not fall for that. I'm not sure if he saw that or was aware, but he played, especially on the beginner level, rather other natural move, which is just pushing the pawn to c3. This pawn is a bit worried now, but you basically give the tempo back by retreating your bishop. And you can see the elbows get all the way up to 2.0 because black just wasted 1 and 2 moves just to have a bishop somewhere where it's like not really sure where it wants to go, right? I mean, this is blocked. Even if the king castles to this side, this pawn can easily push forward here, creating a nice line, and we have the bishop here as well. And this black bishop might even be in trouble of being trapped here. Now, with all of the little space that black bishop had, a really good move to play here would have been pawn to b4. Force the bishop back here. It creates some really nice tempo advantage with the possibility of trapping the bishop if not careful, and even push this pawn he takes, you take back with a knight. The bishop doesn't have many space to go, right? So this would have been a really nice move here to kind of pressure the bishop. You know, you pretty much on a castle the short side, the king side anyway, so just makes sense to push your pawns either way, and you win a tempo. So yeah, retreating here was obviously necessary. There was castle, and then Manu played another really weird move, f6. I guess the idea was to protect this pawn. But like, if you look at that, that looks kind of dangerous, especially if you want to castle to this side, right? I mean, this leaves the king a little bit open. And it's also pretty slow because you really want to get, you know, you want to get your bishop here, you want to get your knight out. So there was a bit of a passive move. I think he was like worried about protecting this pawn, but then at the same time, you could have kept that pawn here to have a safe castle and, oops, just play this, which will in turn protect this, right? So yeah, a bit of a slow move there. All right. Anyway, it's not terrible. It's not losing a piece or something, but it's just like, what's the purpose of this move? And you could have achieved the same thing with a developing move, right? And Dane likes to develop his knight finally. The problem is this move here was still by far the best move here. This is a bit passive as well. You could gain tempo here. You don't, like, you're blocking your bishop from ever being active in the near future. So you do want to play this. And by playing this here, now playing this is impossible on next turn, because if you push the pawn here, the knight comes here with an attack on the queen, and then this bishop will take this pawn right afterwards, protecting the knight. So that's why this is a bad move. That's why you saw the evaluation bar go down back there again, because yeah, it basically heavily weakens the square and doesn't really offer anything in return, you know. Cool. Manu finally developing the knight. See, that's like, if you develop this knight anyway to protect this, what's the point of this move? Like, why did you play this? You know, you basically you spend 2 moves doing the same thing, protecting this pawn instead of castling or developing another piece. This is just like slight inaccuracies, which, you know, even over the course of one game can add up to a significantly worse position. Anyway, Dane strikes back with an inaccurate move himself. Queen to a4. Developing the queen way too early. And putting her in a position where she's also not really threatening anything. I mean, maybe his idea here was to, oh, I can pin the knight. But, I mean, any kind of move Black wants to play next would naturally like evade that. Like you want a castle, you want to develop your bishop even to here, you know. So really weird one, and also the knight is protected by the bishop is protected by the knight, so you're not attacking anything, you're not threatening anything, and you put your queen in the corner. Why? Manu in this position probably thought the same. Not rushing anything with the castling, even though this should have been done already by now. This pawn should be here, and this would be much better. I mean, if you compare the position we have at the moment to the position I try to indicate here, you had like a pawn or a fray and a castle king with the potential of a rook which can easily become active, versus an uncastle king which technically is pinned here, I guess, and also like a very weak position here. Anyway, now the intention of this move should be pretty obvious to anyone who like plays chess, right? This is obviously the threat. That's why this pawn moves now, so it can protect here with a double attack on these two pieces, which would basically lose the game, right? So this is a very, very obvious intent here, which Dane sees and retreats his queen. Now this was kind of a mistake as well. Retreating the queen here to avoid that fork is obviously what you should do here, but a much better spot, instead of moving the queen down here, would have been queen b3, because now, and I always try to emphasize on like drawing these lines to see what attacks what, right? You have the bishop and the queen, and if you see those two lines, you see that there's two attackers right now on this knight and only one defender. So if black ever decides to push the pawn here, you just take, and you saw the evil boss shooting up right there because you just lose a piece. So basically you completely stop that move in its tracks, making this move a bit awkward as well, because after moving this pawn here and these two, like, there's no safe castle anymore for the king. I mean, yeah, this is still okay-ish here with these two pawns, but like all of this wide diagonal here is like wide open, right? So you would have stopped all of this attack, and then putting the queen here doesn't really allow any counterplay to capitalize on that. Sure, if the bishop wasn't here, then the knight would happily jump over here, forking these two pieces, but the bishop is there. And now you're creating another threat. How do you defend that? You probably have to go back with the knight here, right? To protect here, which, you know, develops the knight back to this guy. If you go bishop here, that's just like terrible, because you can see already. I should wait. Let me turn off this suggested move. This is somewhere. Show threats. Show highlight moves. No. Right. So yeah, like if you try to protect with the bishop, this just happens, and you have to move the rook, and you lose it. You know, it's just game over, right? So, yeah, in this position, the queen would have been very happy to come here, creating an attack here, making it impossible for the white bishop to develop anywhere at this moment. And if you see the queen goes down here, it's like a pretty good advantage here for white with a 1.1, right? So, yeah, this would have been the way to retreat here. However, Dane goes back to a3. Now, the good thing with that move, at least, is if we draw our line, is that now the king is unable to castle for the time being, right? Which, again, he should have already done, because this pawn was a... Now, I will refer to this pawn as like the unnecessary one, yeah? Because this is really... now, if you check the game down the line, you see like how much trouble this extra move costs you down the line. This is like a very good lesson here, I guess. So the queen goes down, goes back here to a3, to avoid this thing. However, of course, Manu is totally fine to play that because, yeah, you're still attacking the bishop. You know, you have to retreat with the bishop here, and you just took a lot of space. Now, if you go back here with the bishop, it's not the worst thing because black cannot really attack you here due to these two pawns. Like, there's no knight. There's like there's two knights and a bishop on the square, but because of a pawn here, it's just not really doing much, right? So this pawn is an MVP at the moment, you could say. He's the MVP at the moment. Yeah. That's what you have to do in the situation. Now, Dane didn't do that. And instead, he went on to capture the knight. Which was, of course, quickly answered with a queen capture. And now the position looks a bit worse because, yeah, this knight is gone, and so is the bishop that should be here. But now this queen is here, right? And this queen is pretty active. Attacking the pawn, creating some threats, maybe pushing the pawn here. Now we have a knight. You know, there's a lot of, like, problems. We have a rook here now, which follows down here. There's a lot of, like, pressure on the side of the board now, right? So trading the bishop, which is also, you know, you had like you had the possibility to have, like, if you just go back and if you just went here, like, these two pieces were solid. Like, there was nothing attacking them. And you had like these beautiful lines to where the king eventually we don't even know if that will happen, right? But where the king eventually, if at all, would ever castle, right? So this was a very nice kind of sniping down the oops, no, he doesn't snipe like that. Sniping down the king's position if you have a castle. And if he doesn't, then there's a whole other bunch of problems that will show up very quickly, right? So trading here for the knight, not what you would want to do. No. Now the queen is here, and now black turned the tables and is now a little bit in the lead. Now, nothing too bad, you know. Nobody lost a piece here. We still have two knights and a bishop, or there's two bishops and a knight. People always tell you that on high-elo games, the bishop pair always better. Doesn't really matter for that elo we're playing here, and if it were, maybe even the knight would be better. But anyway, the bishop had a nice position. So what is it you want to do to deal with this? Now, if you ask the computer is just like still trying to play this move, right? This is still the best move. This was the best move for the last 6 rounds or so. And I wonder why I never played that. At least until now. This would have been a good time to do that. The bishop has to retreat here, you know, and you can just attack the queen now. You know, if you take here, you have this. You have two connected pawns, which the queen will have to go somewhere. Then this pushes forward, putting the bishop back to this square here. And next, you know, there's like a lot of little things you can do here. So it would be a really nice position. Unfortunately, we still didn't get that move. This move was on the table for so many moves now. You know, we had the queen the queen which went here, the queen and then retreat, and the bishop taking and all of that. So yeah, there have been plenty of opportunities to play that one, and it still has moved like instead the knight goes here, and this is not a good move. Now, first of all, you have to ask yourself, like, what does this move accomplish, right? Okay. Frees up the bishop. Amazing. Where does it go? Because, oops, not this one. These 3 squares are certainly not possible. This could be okay, at least to, like, develop it finally. This looks pretty bad. Like, what does it want to do here? Especially if you ever push this pawn, like... But it doesn't do anything else than freeing up the bishop. And more importantly, this pawn is just hanging there, right? And in this position, You know, the queen just took here, right? The queen just came out. So the queen is like, oh, she's out. Like, she grabs the attention. What can she do? That would be like what you would think about immediately if the opponent's queen just comes out like that, right? And you would see, if, again, you try to draw the lines, you would see that of all the ways she can go now, I mean, yeah, she can go here, but that doesn't make sense, right? There's one threat, and this is a pawn. And it's 2 squares away. two squares away. It's not... It shouldn't be too difficult to see, right? If you draw the lines, that is. If you don't draw the lines, you're like, oh, my knight. Sure. Anyway, the knight's developed here. Manu capitalizes immediately. Grabs that pawn. And now... now we have our first major blunder of the game. Now, if we try to do the same thing we just talked about, now the queen is here. So what is she doing now? What is the queen doing now? If we draw these lines. So this is obviously not a threat, even though it could be in the future if the queen moves, because we have 2 attackers on that. There's nothing here to take, nothing here. The king is obviously protected by the rook is obviously protected by the king. This is protected by the pawn, but this... Oh, hello! This knight is hanging now. So a good move would be to at least protect it now, because you don't want to lose, because that would be the first actual piece we lose unnecessarily. So far we only lost an unnecessary pawn. And no, I'm not speaking about this one. This is the other unnecessary pawn. But we really like to not lose pace here, right? And Dane played bishop d2. Now, he tried to free up the bishop with this knight move earlier. And as I mentioned, all of those squares are unavailable. But what does it do here? Like, do you want to push this pawn? Does it have to protect this pawn? Because it's protected like many times already. Like, what's the purpose of this move? This like, I'm not gonna lie, like, this looks like the move. I have to mention at this point as well, like, they play with a time limit, right? So they both had 10 minutes with a 5-second increment, I believe. And I'm pretty sure he still had a couple of minutes on the clock. You know, if you have 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you just think, oh, I have to develop my thing. It's my knight's protected. Okay, I could see that like happening, you know, in that kind of scenario. But I'm pretty sure it was not, because a couple of more moves have been played, right? So yeah, Manu does what every person who wants to win a round of chess does, and he captures the free piece. That makes sense, right? And at this point, you can see on the left side that the evil bar is like -4. -4 is pretty bad. If this was a soccer game, it would probably be 2-0 and there will be 5 minutes left to play. I'm not sure if this analogy is working. Either way. Okay, we lost a piece. Now, on this level, that doesn't mean game over, right? A lot of things can happen. This evaluation bar is obviously based on, like, oh, if you play perfect from here, right? So, you know, a lot of things can happen, and I promise you, they do. But first we have rook to e1. Unfortunately, a round too late, because if it was played earlier, it would have protected the knight. And if we go back a couple of moves, where we should have protected this pawn, or just strike with b4 finally, which we didn't do, the only reason this knight was hanging in the first place is because it made a move it shouldn't have done. So you put your knight here, you lose a pawn, and at this point you create another problem for yourself by putting this knight here, which was bad to begin with, but now it's attacked, where does it go? Right? I mean, in this position, I mean, you know, you could probably play this. This would probably be the best move, right? You attack the queen. The queen has to like maybe moves back a little. Oh, not there for sure. Has to move back a little bit, attacking this, getting out of the way. But you're still fine. You just lost the pawn, and you know, at center pawn at this level is like not the end of the world. You can then develop the bishop here to defend this one more time, and then you have time for your rook to come out. You know, a lot of nice things could happen here. So even though the knight move here was bad, now would have been the chance, right, to jump here. But nope, the bishop. Again, I have no idea how this move came to be. Manu capitalizing. Now the rook comes a bit too late, as I said, and then the queen safely retreats to d5. And now finally, after a felt eternity, the move that has been best for the last rounds is played. Which is also interesting, because if you wanted to play this move, why put the bishop here? Like, what does the bishop here that he wouldn't be doing here? Because here he would at least be able to go somewhere. He would be protected by the pawn, and he would not be blocked by his own pawns. And at this point, this pawn is not attacked, hence it doesn't have or need to be defended anymore. And you have the queen here defending it just in case. So yeah. No. And Manu took her. So this is not the best move, which should be pretty obvious because you just lose a piece. You should have gone here. Also having now, since the whole field is a little bit more empty, you have this nice line on the king. But he wanted to go for something here which he only after the take back realized didn't work. I think he tried to go with some shenanigans and try to see if he can take this one, but that was, I don't know. There was something he might have seen. And now the knight comes here. Now, remember when I said, if we are moving around this ELO, anything can happen. Just like we just lost the knight here, and now with this great bishop move here. Now, Manu's thinking, you know what? Boom. And if you have a close look at the ELO bar, it goes from -4 to 0. 0. That's quite a jump for a single move. Yeah, Manu, you know, he's a very nice guy. All right. Dane, we're just gonna bring him back to 0. And start fresh over. The point is, like, this is a very bad move, and it might not be too easy to see why this is a bad move. Because if you just have a glance at it, you're like, okay, the knight takes here, and then the queen takes back, and like, what's the problem, right? What's the problem with this move? No, you take. And the point is that, yes, you don't lose a piece just like white did beforehand. We have to take back with queen here, obviously. But not this move. F3, attacking the rook. Now you cannot push the bishop here, obviously, because we're just taken. You do not want the rook to become there, because it will never move. So the only logical move here would be that, and then you have check in here. You know, the queen can move. You can also block it like this, which allows our queen to infiltrate, still protecting the bishop here. And yeah, I mean, with this gambit here before, the pieces are now even, and now white is just at least in a equal position. You know, you have a nice active queen. This bishop is not developed yet, and so on and so forth. So this could have been the equalizer. That was the move that basically reset the game. As I said, when I was like, you know what? Let's start fresh. Let's have a nice endgame together. And Dane says, no thank you. He blunders the next move. Now, what's this idea here? Oh, ho ho, your queen is pinned. You can't move your knight. Because your queen is unprotected. And if you try to defend it, I can take. You cannot take back, because this is a dangerous thing here. So he thought maybe, oh, I can trap the queen or pin the queen and win the knight. Unfortunately, though, this knight takes with check, right? And you cannot take the queen because you're in check. And if you check back here, you know, with the bishop. So that is not good. So after given the opportunity to even out the game, Dane is like, no, thank you. I like to play from behind. And Black proceeds with doing exactly that, capturing with check, and now winning the bishop, right? Nope. That's not what transpires here. Dane is like, you know what? I'll just take the pawn. Now, if you have a close look at either the evaluation bar or the board, you can perhaps see why this is a bad move. Yep. The queen is gone. And by this time, I mean, they played a couple more moves here. But to what extent, nah? If I have a look what actually was played after that. Rook AC1. Okay, yeah. So afterwards, Dane played this move. He's like, you know, I was gonna give all my pieces away. Then I'm gonna move this one. And then the queen just took care, and a couple more moves played. We had a castle, and the king was running for his life a little bit. But yeah, nothing to analyze. That pretty much it was just like a rundown from like finishing the game. So actually a pretty back and forth match. If we go back to the position and we just play a couple of moves here, you can see that this was a bit of an inaccuracy from Black's side there. And I'm gonna pause here. This move here was certainly not good, even though it looked bad. Looked pretty good with the developing and checking. But after this move and this move, Dane had the possibility here to push this pawn at any point. Let's see if we can if we turn this on, would it show this move? Highlight moves. It does not. Anyway, this would have been great. You know, you go here. Can even push this pawn. I have to play this just to get back into this, and it's like, and then we have this. So we have castle. If you take, just castle. You can take again. I check. It just you know, it falls apart, right? Of course, you know, you don't have to lose the game at this point here, but like, it would have been a good move to push these pawns here. Yeah, like with the bishop here, and you are pretty much wanting to castle here anyway. This would have been the move to play, but it was not. And then we had Mr. Unnecessary here, a bit of a slip for Manu, and you can see the Elo like Dane is winning by a margin here. A couple more moves, both developing a little bit. The queen here was a little bit of an accuracy, always going back down there. And now here the queen should have gone here. Again, you see these two lines. Well, you did not. You went here, allowing this move anyway, trading a very good bishop for this knight. And from here, the game was still evenish. Like, it was still anybody's game, right? But then I moved here, and then From here on out, it slowly started to fall apart. This already gave Manu a huge advantage here. Not only because of the pawn, but because of this very active queen. And then everything just collapsed with losing another piece here. Going with the queen there. Now the rook comes there. Queen can safely retreat. Now finally this move comes. Now this happened. And the knight came over here. And there was a chance. But before this move happened, here Manu basically... he should obviously have retrieved the bishop here. By taking this, he was revitalizing the game a little bit. And then he was like, you know what? No. Let's make it absolute 100% even again. And then Dane just neglected that and lost his queen. Alright. I hope you could learn something from this analysis. It's the first one of these videos. We're probably going to have a couple more in the near future. We're going to have another round of games this Saturday, and hopefully we'll have another video with that as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. See you!